Good morning and welcome back to episode number 4 of What Would Charlie Shoot? Today I'm going to be talking about different things about what I wanted to be when I grew up. I'm also going to be answering your questions, and I'm going to be talking about some more photography classes that are coming up as well. And so first things first, I wanted to be a rock star when I grew up. What did you want to be? Around age 10, in addition to receiving my first camera that would send me on a mission with no condition, I wanted to be a rock star. I listened to Aerosmith, AC/DC, Guns N' Roses, and others with my dad as we drove around in his old pickup truck. I helped him with handyman jobs when he got laid off from his work so that the family could make ends meet. Every time that we went out on a job to get supplies, he would crank up the same cassette tapes as loud as possible, and we would scream to the top of our lungs at the songs we loved. When Bon Jovi's Living on a Prayer played, my dad and I lost our voices from trying to hit the high notes. I can still hear his version of high notes as clear as day in my mind whenever I hear that song. I did not know then that I did not want to be a rock star. I wanted to spend time with my dad. Sometimes life sends you on goose chases. The goose chases teach us valuable lessons about ourselves and of life. When I turned 14, my family finally agreed to let me get my first guitar. The guitarists and bands were the coolest in my opinion. They were always under the spotlight and got the solos. I wanted to be just like them. My first guitar was an all-black $100 Sears Harmony Electric with a small 10-watt amp. I played the shit out of that guitar night and day until my parents told me it was time to turn it off and go to sleep. I dreamed of being like my music idols that my dad inspired me with as we rode around in his truck. And I added the likes of Metallica, Nirvana, Alice in Chains, and others to my repertoire as I learned. I only knew how to play the intro riff to Smells Like Teen Spirit, but I played the shit out of that too. I was Kurt fucking Cobain in my bedroom as I thrashed around with the same 4 chords over and over. At age 16 to 18, I decided it was time to form a band called Distorted Moon and make my dreams come true. I found a drummer through a flyer at a local music shop called Herb David Guitars, and we formed the best act that we would ever leave my parents' garage. Every week we played covers of our favorite groups. We picked up on Green Day, Soundgarden at the height of the 90s grunge scene. The neighbors probably hated us, but we played our hearts out every time and no one ever said a thing or called the cops. I started to write for the first time, mainly from what was in my gut and my head. I could not believe that I created original songs, some of which were pretty damn good if I listened to them still today. During this project, my music was briefly entertained by Lava Records when I decided to send out an old-school demo tape. They quickly dumped us in favor of a little-known band called Matchbox 20 at the time. Damn you, Rob Thomas, and your fantastic talent. Somewhere around 97 or 98, my garage band dreams dissipated. My drummer had a kid, we never found a solid bass player, and the record labels never really knocked on the garage door to sign us. Before Cameron Crowe ever introduced the movie Almost Famous, I got back into music after meeting my ex-wife. I formed a local garage rock band called Almost Famous. It was my first attempt at incorporating an all-original material. I quickly found a singer and a guitar player through local music flyers, again at the guitar shop. We ended up cutting a record that we recorded in my apartment at the time called The Upstairs Chronicles. My guitar player wanted to be in a metal band. My singer was on his way to law school eventually. Still, we played the shit out of our originals. The name of the album came about because my apartment was upstairs and we had to haul a shit ton of gear up the stairs every time that we practiced. I learned that if you want to succeed at something that you're passionate about, you have to tell people about it. One mistake I made that I thought it was about the .com and that people would magically like our music. I was wrong. We played several local shows with a revolving door around drummers in Southeast Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. And eventually my guitarist hooked us up with a lawyer in New York that claimed to have ties with Sony Music. We paid the lawyer to hook us up with a pitch to Sony and got invited to a minor development deal. They asked us to resubmit our music again after we polished things. We had no idea how rough our recordings were and that was what was required to make a great album, yet we tried again. Sony shot us down in flames and we were sent packing to mend our wounds. We continued to play local shows until we started to record for our sophomore album. We were a couple tracks in at a professional studio in our hometown when my singer announced that he had to focus on law school. My drummer was graduating college as an English major for a different job also. Disheartened, I decided to fold up shop and give up on the band. This led me to figure out how to land on my own feet. After Almost Famous split up, it took me a little bit of time away from music to get my things back together again. I thought being in a band was a crapshoot and I would never make it as a rock star. I kept writing on my own and eventually taught myself how to play all the instruments I needed to record my own material. I thought that maybe I did not need a band after all. In 2005, I released my solo debut, Remembering the Moments. It was a pretty mellowed out thing for my punk rock garage experiments. People described it as country meets guster. Yet in my mind, I was just writing my guts out in the bedroom again, trying to get people to love what I created. I played my music for anyone and everyone that would listen, and I started to learn a precious lesson. If you want people to understand what you love doing, you have to listen to what they also do as you tell them about your work. I supported this album by playing solo in coffee shops, bookstores, streets, and anywhere that would listen. When I look back at my album art, it has a lot to be desired. But I was learning a valuable lesson about producing a product for the first time on my own. I finished support for my 2005 solo album, and I experimented with other bands like The Betrayed, which was punk, metal, and rock, Hellbent, yes, we had a horrible taste in using upper and lowercase letters in our name, and a few other jam sessions. Nothing ever stuck, so I gave up on music altogether and sold off most of my gear around 2010. I was discouraged and depressed about my dreams of becoming a famous rock star. In 2016, I was photographing behind the scenes for my friend Jordan Matter on his Dancers After Dark project. It was late one night at Times Square when Jordan was photographing a dancer when it hit me. What would it look like if I photographed the dancer in motion instead of still? I began experimenting with dance in motion with several dancers in New York City for 2 years before my book release, Kinetic. And as I was getting near wrapping and publishing the project, I was also sharing my own behind-the-scenes videos of my process, which led me to the idea of recording my own music for the videos again. I bought an all-black Les Paul and recorded it in my bedroom. This time I had a much better understanding of what I was doing to produce music, and I was off and running. I released an album in 2017, many years after my bands and solo projects alongside the book release, to support the dance videos. I learned more about promoting my projects. Then the dream changed. I can honestly say that when I dropped my Kinetic book and my album release in 2017 that the dream changed dramatically. I was no longer that 10-year-old kid that wanted to copy the famous rock stars. I was me. Did the book and the album sell millions of copies? Nope. Was I famous? Nope. Did I learn something? Yep. I learned to pursue exactly what I am passionate about. Hell, it took me 20 years to learn this one thing, but that's why it is crucial to have a dream and to follow it. Dreams teach us about ourselves and sometimes lead us to where we should be in life. And do I still play music today? Yes. I prefer sitting down with my trusty old acoustic. It is simple, it has character, and I play it because I love it. And as I look back many years to where I started with my dad in his old pickup truck listening to rock stars, I finally understand that this moment was about spending time with him. It was never about being a rock star. It was about connecting with my dad and the way he gave me love. It taught me a humbling lesson. It makes me realize what I want to give my own children one day. I want to see them too follow their dreams. What did you want to be when you grew up? P.S. I went on from that 10-year-old kid to become the photographer that I am today, and I photographed every single one of my music heroes. So that's how I wanted to become a rock star when I grew up, and I was wondering, what is it that you wanted to be when you grew up? Did you have a dream too? Did you actually achieve that dream, or did you throw it to the side? Let me know. So on our agenda today also, I want to get back to some of your questions. The first question that came in today is, why don't I like being photographed, but I still like taking photos? Well, a lot of us as photographers want to hide behind the camera. We have a lot of fun creating things, but we really don't want to be in front of the camera to be the one created with. I think it's that we feel vulnerable in front of the camera, which is why we kind of tend to hide behind the camera as well. And so that's why I think that you don't like being photographed, but you still like taking photos. Number 2 today, what are some common hacks for a better nature photography? I would say learn your camera first. You can go into your landscape mode in your camera, which will take a generally good shot, or play with something like aperture priority mode, program mode, or you can go into full manual mode eventually once you learn things. If you want to go ahead and up your game also, I would suggest to learn some composition techniques, the rule of thirds, leading lines, perspective, things like that go into great with nature photography. Number 3 today, what were your horrible experiences as a photographer? Well, one thing I think about is one time I was in a hotel and I was in Chicago. I was in a hurry to go out with my friends that night. I set my camera on a desk. Long story short, I accidentally had the strap wrapped around my wrist, and when I moved really quickly to go into the other room to get ready, the camera went flying. It was like a slow motion action scene in a movie, and I said, "No!" as the camera flew through the air. It made a loud clunk on the floor and shattered onto a million pieces. That's one of my most horrible experiences as a photographer, is having my camera break. I have many other stories as well, and I'll share them in upcoming podcasts, but that's the one that I think of today. Number 4 that came in this week, what is the importance of photography as a source of financial needs? Well, I think first and foremost, do photography just because you love it. Make pictures of things that you care about, people you care about, places you care about, and things of that sort. Don't get too trapped up in photography just for financial gains, because if you do, you'll be sadly disappointed. I talked about that in another podcast already, but I think that's my advice for you. If you do decide that you want to make money in photography, first of all, go ahead and make sure you understand things like your camera. Make sure you understand that you're going into business for yourself instead of being a photographer as well. There's a lot of different aspects of business of photography that go into it that people don't think about. They think they can just make pretty pictures and get paid to do it. There's a lot of things in business that you will hate, but I would say learn photography first and be good at that and be happy with that. So number 5 today, why do you think that your photography is not great? Well, I remember when I started out in photography, I was comparing myself a lot to other photographers that I admired. My advice, don't compare yourself to others if possible. Look at what you have in front of you and find the best way to make the best picture that you possibly can out of what you have at your disposal. Also, getting lost in social medias is a big no-no. Don't compare yourself to others in likes and follows and things like that. Really, that's irrelevant to your photography. And so when you think about your photography not being great, don't think of that way. Think positive. Try to go ahead and make the best situation that you can with what you have with your camera and your situation, and go forth from there. Also today, I want to talk about making better photographs. With making better photographs, I've taught many students around the world. I've had students in 42 different countries in my career. I've taught in New York, Los Angeles, Milan, Chicago, and many other destinations, to name a few. I want to go ahead and talk about my Udemy class because I've launched a brand new Udemy class. It's called How to Improve Your Photography, a Gift You'll Love. If you jump over to Udemy and you search this class, you'll be able to register for just $24.99. And this will give you all the tips and tricks that you need to get started with your photography. In the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to drop me an email as well. I'm happy to set up a private lesson with you. I teach on Zoom. I also teach in person wherever I'm at in the world at the time that I visit. So if you want to improve your photography, hit me up. I'm happy to chat. And last but not least today, I want to wish you all a very great week. If you want to hear different things on What Would Charlie Shoot, or if you want to hear any specific photographers come onto the show, let me know. I'll go ahead and I'll post up a link where you can submit your comments and questions, and we'll go from there. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next week on What Would Charlie Shoot.